before significant changes of any kind occurred, we were no longer vulnerable to the vagaries of chance. Corona had made possible a new era of technical intelligence. As a result, we were warned before the Soviets intervened in Czechoslovakia and successfully monitored preparation for the 1967 war in the Middle East.
We have proved that we are a good and reliable friend to those who seek peace and freedom. We have shown that we can also be a formidable foe to those who reject the path of peace, and those who seek to impose upon us are our allies, the yoke of tyranny.
In 1967, the final evolution of the Corona camera took place. Although the J1 was performing almost perfectly, it had been developed to the limit of its potential. The J3 was designed to eliminate vibration, improve resolution, and improve calibration data. The sophistication for command response gave the J3 much greater versatility. The history of the J3 improved the intelligence quality substantially and proved to be even more reliable than the excellent J1. However, the real test of the improvements can be seen in the evolution of image quality. On the earliest Corona mission, a target image of 25-foot resolution was all that was obtainable. But as lenses, stability, and film technology improved, the images resolved smaller and smaller detail until with the J3, image resolution was down to 5 or 6 feet. This quantum improvement significantly improved both the amount and quality of intelligence derived from the Corona product. Then, in 1968, tests proved the value of color in infrared imagery. Photographs from space could detect crop and environmental conditions of value to strategic intelligence, and ushering in a new field of Earth resources studies from space. The impact on photographic interpretation was enormous.
Program, which I think would be worth recording here. Before the early 50s, the Central Intelligence Agency had no photographic intelligence activity at all. We started with a handful of people, and one of the great consequences of the program is the enormous rush of growth that it has created in our own photographic intelligence resources, where now the National PI Center is probably the largest or one of the largest photo intelligence activities in the world, certainly the largest in the West. But when we started, we had less than 13 people. We had less than 800 square feet of floor space. We had a budget of less than $100,000 a year. Here in the 1972 fall, we have more than 1,500 people dedicated to the exploitation of products. We have a budget each year which is pretty close to $30 million. We have over 400,000 square feet of floor space and a program that is no way yet topped off. It's steadily growing. Now, little did we realize what was going to develop so quickly when on the 18th of August in 1960, this first satellite was successfully retrieved. It flew for only one day. It had 16, 17 passes, 8 of them over the Soviet Union, and 20 pounds of film came back. And with intelligence resources, we're now the National PI Center is probably the largest or one of the largest photo and
smaller detail. With the J3, image resolution was down to 5 or 6 feet. This quantum improvement significantly improved both the amount and quality of intelligence derived from the Corona product. Then, in 1968, tests proved the value of color in infrared imagery. Photographs from space could detect crop and environmental conditions of value to strategic intelligence, and ushering in a new field of Earth resources studies from space. The impact on photographic interpretation was enormous.
Program, which I think would be worth recording here. Before the early 50s, the Central Intelligence Agency had no photographic intelligence activity at all. We started with a handful of people, and one of the great consequences of the program is the enormous rush of growth that it has created in our own photographic intelligence resources, where now the National PI Center is probably the largest or one of the largest photo intelligence activities in the world, certainly the largest in the West. But when we started, we had less than 13 people. We had less than 800 square feet of floor space. We had a budget of less than $100,000 a year. Here in the 1972 fall, we have more than 1,500 people dedicated to the exploitation of these products. We have a budget each year which is pretty close to $30 million. We have over 400,000 square feet of floor space and a program that is no way yet topped off. It's steadily growing. Now, little did we realize what was going to develop so quickly when on the 18th of August in 1960, this first satellite was successfully retrieved. It flew for only one day. It had 17 passes, 8 of them over the Soviet Union, and 20 pounds of film came back. And with that film in hand, we turned to, and in less than 7 days, we had produced 130 pages of text. We had a 1.5 million square miles of coverage of the Soviet Union. This was the harbinger that warned us of what was coming, and as we were steadily gearing up and trying to get ready for what was coming, both in instrumentation and procedure and data handling products, the film was flowing in. By the time the program ended, we were dealing with film that was coming in at the rate of 32,000 instead of 3,600 linear feet per mission. We had covered over 520 million square miles of real estate. We had produced millions of pages of reporting, and we were involved in all the major issues of our time. All of the ICBMs in the Soviet Union, the complexes had been discovered, for example, by 1964. All their SAM sites, all their airfields, all their nuclear weapons testing and storage sites, all of their Y-class submarines, all their enigmatic problems. We were right on top of these, and we were involved in the major decision-making of our time. There was tremendous demand upon the people in this center.
The 145th and final Corona launch took place on 25 May 1972. Corona had proved to be a remarkable investment. The totality of Corona's contribution to U.S. intelligence holdings on denied areas of the world and the U.S. space program in general is virtually unmeasurable. What had begun as a desperate attempt to meet sinister threat had succeeded beyond the wildest imaginings of the program's initiators. The list of Corona firsts is unparalleled. The first recovered objects from orbit. First to deliver intelligence information from a satellite. First mapping from space. First stereoptic pictures from space. The first satellite to employ multiple re-entry vehicles. And the first reconnaissance program to pass the 100-plus mission mark. And not least, the first photography from a satellite. Corona's 167 successful recoveries are more than the total of all other United States programs combined. Corona provided photographic coverage of over 500
same time, the A-12 Oxcart reconnaissance aircraft proposed by CIA was given a careful evaluation. The board held that while both were promising programs, the critical need for intelligence at that point in time warranted an interim photo reconnaissance system that could get into operation earlier than the SAMOS could be ready. This was a significant decision, particularly for that era. Just 20 days before, the Soviet Union had orbited the world's first satellite, Sputnik 1, from the Churyumov range. The United States was still over 3 months away from launching its first small satellite. But the need for reliable intelligence on Soviet missile deployment was becoming more and more urgent. The so-called missile lag debate was already underway with the Senate Preparedness Subcommittee holding hearings on this issue. The White House responded rapidly to the board's recommendation. Dr. James Killian, who had just assumed his new position as Special Assistant to the President for Science and Technology, arranged a meeting for the first week of December among the President, the Director of Central Intelligence, Mr. Allen Dulles, and the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Mr. Donald Quarles. At this meeting, only 8 weeks after Sputnik 1, the President decided to proceed with a joint CIA Air Force interim photo reconnaissance satellite program to answer the critical intelligence questions about Soviet missiles. The system was to be based on physical recovery of film from the space vehicle. This decision marked the birth of the remarkable Corona project. The full import of the decision, however, can be comprehended only if we recall the primitive nature of our understanding of space technology and the critical need for hard intelligence information which existed at that point in time.
By the summer of 1957, the U-2 had already spent a year in service. It had never been intended as operational for more than a year or two. The operational life expectancy was based on the likelihood that the Soviets would in some months track it successfully and with accurate tracking data in hand, bring pressures to discontinue the flight. As it turned out, we had misjudged the Soviet air surveillance capability at the time. Their radar had tracked every flight from the first. The Soviets filed a protest. After that, overflights were made only sporadically. Although for 3 more years, the U-2 ranged over much of the rest of the world. And so we set out on December 8, 1957, to build and develop what has become known as Corona, the world's first photographic reconnaissance satellite. Its importance from today's perspective is momentous. In the weeks after Sputnik 1, there was pressure from all quarters to accelerate the U.S. missile and space program. And there was much public debate about military versus civilian control of the space program. In the perspective of that time, President Eisenhower addressed the nation.
Long-range ballistic missiles, as they exist today, do not cancel the destructive and deterrent power of our strategic air force. The Soviet launching of Earth satellites is an achievement of the first importance, and the scientists who brought it about deserve full credit and recognition. Already, useful new facts on outer space have been produced.